Okay, let's imagine this. What if a chillingly detailed account, like a full history of a world teetering on the edge, just landed on your desk? A world filled with these startling bioengineered creatures and really complex human stories.
Yeah, imagine getting this collection. Intimate observations, scientific reports, deeply personal accounts, all from a reality that feels, well, disturbingly familiar in some ways, but also completely dystopian.
It's quite the thought experiment, and today that's kind of what we're doing. We are diving deep into some extraordinary source material, specific excerpts from a document called Oryx and Crake, a novel Margaret Atwood .pdf.
Exactly. And importantly for our purposes here, we're treating this not as fiction. We're approaching it like it's a factual chronicle, a meticulously recorded history of a civilization, its rise and its eventual collapse, all seen through the eyes of those who are left.
Right. So our mission for you listening is to pull out the key insights from these pages. The surprising details, the really human moments, we'll explore their society, the wild science they were doing, the betrayals, and what happened after the catastrophe, all from the perspective of the survivors. It's basically a shortcut to getting informed on a really profound and honestly quite disturbing period. Let's jump right into the aftermath then. Our document starts with this character, Snowman. He's alone, his memory's shot, he's physically falling apart, always looking for basics like whiskey or sunblock. What's his world like right at this moment, according to the files? And what's his role?
Well, the records paint a grim picture. Snowman's reality is just this desperate daily struggle, surviving in the ruins of this bioengineered landscape. His mind is failing. He calls his brain a stub, but he clings to words, old words. He thinks when they're gone out of his head,
Yeah.
they'll be gone everywhere forever.
Wow, that's heavy. The weight of language itself.
Exactly. And this need to preserve language, even while he's essentially making up history for these children of Crake, it just shows how fundamental storytelling is, even when everything else is gone. He's the last keeper of words, in a way.
That fragility of memory, of language, it seems central. But if Snowman's present is so, well, fractured, how much can we rely on his memories of the past? The document shifts back, doesn't it, to Jimmy, his earlier self. What do we learn about his childhood, his family?
Yeah, the chronicle details Jimmy's father. He was a genographer at a place called Organic Farms, a big name in projects like the Methuselah Mouse,
Yeah.
part of something called Operation Immortality, and the really famous Pigoon project.
Pigoons. Right. What exactly were they? The document defines them, I think.
It does. Officially sus multi-organifer.
Right.
Basically, genetically engineered pigs, much larger, designed to grow customizable human organs, which were then frozen, ready as spare parts. A cheaper option, apparently, than cloning or these so-called four-harvest children.
Chilling. And there was that detail about eating them.
Right. The claim was that defunct pigoons weren't eaten, supposedly to set the queasy at ease. Which is really telling, isn't it? It shows how they rationalize commodifying life. Flimsy ethical workarounds instead of facing the real issues. It suggests this deep willingness to trade morality for convenience.
And despite that kind of scientific prestige, Jimmy's home life sounds rough. His mother.
Definitely not idyllic. His mother's mental health was deteriorating. Lots of arguments with the father. She became paranoid about surveillance, too. Thought the phones were bugged, that the house cleaners from Healthwiser, this massive corporation that was everywhere, were spies.
Healthwiser, yeah. That name crops up a lot.
It does, and eventually she just left after a rampage with the hammer, left a strange note for Jimmy, just blah, blah, blah. And the official investigation by the Corpse Corps suspected others involved, maybe linked to some kind of hostile bioform incident.
So, paranoia, corporate intrusion, potential bio-threats. What does that tell us about the society even before the collapse?
It speaks volumes, I think. And there's another memory from Jimmy's childhood that reinforces this anxiety, the bonfire incident. Animals being burned because of some disease. And his father makes this awful joke about burning Jimmy if he coughed.
That's incredibly bleak.
It is. It's not just casual cruelty. It points to this pervasive fear of contagion, a kind of dehumanization bubbling under the surface, even inside the secure compounds. Hints of the anxiety that was building.
And these compounds, they're worlds apart from the Pleeblands, right?
Totally. The compounds, like the ones run by Organic and later New Skins, were these secure, almost luxurious zones for the elite, the top people. Jimmy, growing up, only ever saw the Pleeblands, the vast, dangerous world outside on TV.
What was that image like?
The documents describe it as endless billboards and neon signs, dingy-looking streets, images of rioting people. This stark separation isn't just about walls. It shows how privilege was engineered to create this filtered, distorted reality for those inside. The pleblands were the messy consequence, kept at a distance. It's extreme control and detachment.
Okay, so Jimmy's growing up in this strange, divided world, and then in adolescence, he meets Crake.
Right. Crake transfers into Healthwiser High. He's described as brilliant, like off the charts, floated at the top of the list, even among other smart kids, borderline geniuses. The documents paint him as calm, very instructive, but also detached, often strikingly so.
And their friendship, how did it develop, especially through things like games?
Their shared activities really highlight their different ways of seeing the world. They played competitive games, Barbarian Stomp, which simulated historical battles. But then there was this other game, Blood and Roses.
Blood and Roses, what was that?
It was a training game. You pitted human atrocities, massacres, genocides against human achievements, art, science breakthroughs. And Crake's observation, recorded here, was that the blood player usually won, but winning meant you inherited a wasteland.
Wow, that's quite a takeaway from a game.
Isn't it? And he also noted that history had lots of all three, meaning profanity, obscenity, and nudity. Just this casual cynicism, even then. It's an early sign of his view. Humanity's destructive side always wins out, leads to ruin.
And it wasn't just games, right? Their media habits were pretty dark, too.
Oh, yeah. They watch really graphic stuff. Sites like headsoff.com-live-executions-and-alabubu.com, which supposedly showed amputations, stonings, even something called the Creek Geek Show, eating live animals.
Grim. But Crake didn't necessarily buy it all.
No, true to form, he was skeptical. He thought these blood fests, as the document calls them, were probably staged. He figured the men of the execution videos were paid actors, saying viewers wanted to see the executions but needed one last fighting chance, or else an element of surprise. He suspected it was all rehearsed.
So even reality or perceived reality was suspect, entertainment blurring with atrocity.
Exactly. It suggests a society where information itself, even horror, was just another product, manipulated for eyeballs. Crake's cynicism here shows a deep understanding of media's power to desensitize and control. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it, how much of what we see is curated in similar ways.
It does. And this practicality or cynicism really clashed with Jimmy's perspective, didn't it?
Completely. Crake had this cold logic. He'd explain things like human reproduction and overpopulation with lines like, the less we eat, the more we fuck. Just dark biology. Meanwhile, Jimmy was trying to hold on to ideals, things like courtship behavior, art, trying to find some essential human meaning there.
And how did Crake react to that, to Jimmy's search for meaning in, say, art or love?
Dismissively. He called humans hormone robots, reduced everything to biology. He'd point to archaeology, gnawed bones and old bricks and ossified shit as the only real lasting evidence of humanity. Ossified shit.
That's a brutal image.
It really is. Just strips away all the romanticism, leaves this cynical biological residue. It's a key insight into the mindset that would eventually decide humanity needed. Editing.
Okay, shifting from Crake's cold logic, the Chronicle introduces Oryx, an enigma. Jimmy first sees her online on a porn site, Hot Tots. And it's her look that hits him.
Yeah, her direct, contemptuous, knowing look. A look that seemed to say, I see you watching, I know you, I know what you want. It affected Jimmy profoundly. And Crake. His reaction was typical. Immediately download an archive her image. Pragmatic data collection.
But Oryx's own story, the one she tells Jimmy, it's incredibly dark. What does it reveal?
It's profoundly traumatic, yeah. And it's a harsh look at the world she survived. She talks about being sold by her own family when she was very young, sold to a gold wristwatch man to sell roses with the thorns removed to tourists. There was this figure, Uncle N, and his men, always watching. Threats of beatings, even burning if she was lazy or stole.
Just awful. And wasn't there something about her brother?
Yes. A chilling detail. She mentions her brother being sold to a pimp, becoming a melon bum boy. It's harrowing exploitation.
Yeah.
It exposes the absolute depths people could sink to in that world.
And the exploitation continued, didn't it? The movies.
Right. She was sold again, this time to a man who made movies. And that's where she learned, as she put it, everything has a price. And that being in those movies meant doing what you were told because you were afraid not to. And her assertion, all sex is real.
God. And then there was the pharmacist.
Later, yes, she describes being rescued but essentially locked in a garage, which she called an apartment, by this prosperous pharmacist and his wife, who called herself spiritual. They claim she was practically adopted, treated almost like one of the family, but it sounds like another form of control of possession.
How did all this land on Jimmy? How did he process it?
It fueled this obsession in him. He kept digging, wanting details, torturing himself with painful knowledge, as the document puts it. But Oryx herself remained elusive. She'd give these philosophical, almost evasive answers, like, you always think everyone is thinking, maybe I wasn't thinking anything.
That's a really haunting response.
It is. Her gentle way of pushing back against his assumptions. It's a powerful reflection of how trauma shapes identity, how it can make a person's inner world almost inaccessible to others.
Okay, so from Oryx's deeply personal trauma, the focus shifts again. Back to Crake and his huge scientific projects at places like Watson Crick and Rejuvenescence. This is where the bioengineering really takes off, right?
Absolutely. The sources detail some truly cutting-edge and frankly disturbing stuff, like the spud getter, a splice of a goat and a spider to produce silk for bulletproof vests, life fuse for military tech.
Right, and then chicky knobs.
Ah, yes. The chicky knobs. Headless, no brain function, just chicken parts grown in vats in 2 weeks. Jimmy found them horrible, called them an animal protein tuber.
An animal protein tuber, wow.
It captures that profound detachment, doesn't it? Life reduced purely to utility to efficient protein production. Ethical concerns just bypassed.
And this drive to engineer solutions, it extended beyond animals to humans themselves. The BlyssPluss pill.
Crake's big swing at fixing humanity's problems. It was marketed, or designed at least, as this multi-purpose prophylactic against war, which Crake saw as misplaced sexual energy, against STDs, and against overpopulation.
But there was an unadvertised function.
Yeah, it was also a surefire, one-time, does-it-all birth control pill. Sterilization hidden in a wellness product. And the clinical trials. The records are grim. Subjects fucked themselves to death. Others assaulted old ladies and household pets. Cases of priapism and split dicks. And one spectacular failure where the STD protection didn't work, leading to someone growing a big genital wart all over her epidermis. It wasn't just a bad drug. It was this incredibly hubristic attempt to engineer human behavior on a mass scale. And the failures just highlight how complex and perhaps uncontrollable those flaws Crake saw really were. Jimmy, ironically, worked on its ad campaign.
Trying to make that appealing, quite the challenge. So BlyssPluss was one attempt, but Crake's ultimate project, his life's work, was something else entirely.
Yes, the Paradise Project, the Crakers. This was his endgame. A whole new species of human, designed with an edited brain. Crake aimed to eliminate what he saw as destructive traits.
Like what, specifically?
Things like racism, which he chillingly calls pseudo-speciation, implying it was a biological glitch, not social. Also, hierarchy and territoriality. He saw these as bugs in the human code, things to be engineered out. It reveals that deeply utilitarian, almost mechanistic view of humanity he had.
So what were the Crakers like, biologically?
They were vegetarians. They had periodic heat cycles, replacing complex human sexuality. Their courtship involved music and these bludic dance numbers, as the source puts it. Very functional, very direct. And crucially, no jokes. Crake believed humor required a certain edge, a little malice.
He engineered out malice, and jokes went with it.
Seems so. They were described as naked and beautiful, like floor models for his vision of a better humanity. Optimized, simplified.
A perfect docile species. And Oryx somehow became part of this. How did she fit into Paradise?
Her role was as a teacher for these Crakers. She taught them basic botany and zoology, essentially what not to eat and what could bite. And interestingly, she had to use a citrus spray to mask her own human pheromones to avoid triggering mating responses in the Craker males.
And her name, Oryx Besa.
Yes, she chose the name of an extinct East African herbivore known for conserving water. The irony is just thick, isn't it? In this hyper-engineered future, she takes the name of a creature wiped out by the old world's environmental failures. Failures Crake, that he was fixing. It shows how the past haunts even the blueprint for the future.
Amidst all this world-changing science, though, the document shows basic human drama persisted. This love triangle, or maybe quadrilateral. Jimmy, Oryx, Crake.
Yeah, it's messy. Jimmy's completely consumed by his desire for Oryx. It tortures him. He tries to be honorable, but then he escapes to plea-bland bars, seeking something.
And Oryx, what was her stance?
She drew a very clear line, told Jimmy straight up, Crake lives in a higher world, a world of ideas. You are for fun.
Ouch, that's blunt.
Brutally so. And it really underscores the vast difference between them. Crake, lost in his godlike intellectual project. Jimmy, seeking connection, however flawed. Oryx's assessment just highlights that chasm. How even at the end of the world, basic human needs and complexities clash with grand, detached ambitions.
And then it all comes crashing down. the catastrophe, what Snowman calls the great emptiness.
Yes. The Chronicle describes these rapid, almost simultaneous outbreaks, a rogue hemorrhagic disease hitting major cities globally, Brazil, Taiwan, New York. The symptoms were horrific.
What were they?
High fever, bleeding from the eyes and skin, convulsions, then breakdown of the inner organs. Fast and devastating.
And Jimmy's reaction as the world fell apart outside.
He enacted Crake's contingency plan. Plan B, it was called. Don't let anyone in during a bio attack. So Jimmy sealed himself inside the Paradise Dome, locked out the remaining staff, just him and the Crakers, isolated.
Which sets up the final terrible moments inside that dome.
Exactly. The climax. Crake's final words to Jimmy, recorded here. I'm counting on you. And then he slits Oryx's throat.
Unbelievable. And Jimmy
reacts instantly, shoots Crake. It's abrupt, brutal. The document later gives us this haunting image of their remains, vulturized, scattered bones, Oryx's pink ribbon somehow still there. A definitive, violent end to their story in that world.
So that brings us back to Snowman, his present reality post-apocalypse.
Yeah, the reality we started with. Just sheer survival. Slow starvation, he mentions, catching maybe one fish a week. His body is failing, bleeding gums. His brain feeling like it's dissolving. He relies on scavenged leftovers, alcohol, old food, bits of medicine, and constant vigilance against the modified animals still roaming around. Pigoons, wolvogs, bob kittens, remnants of Crake's world. It's survival at its most basic, most degrading.
And yet he's taken on this role for the Crakers. The myth maker.
Despite his own bitterness, yeah. He crafts these stories for them. Crake is the creator. Oryx is this nurturing figure. He sees it as his job, which is fascinating. It speaks to that deep human need to create meaning, to have a purpose, even if the narrative is entirely constructed.
And the Crakers themselves, their biology is so unique, the caecotrophs.
Right. They ingest their own partially digested droppings, caecotrophs, to get maximum nutrients from plants. A Crake innovation designed for efficiency. Jimmy finds it repulsive. They also purr to heal themselves and each other. They seem utterly content, lacking jokes, as we said. Their singing is crystalline.
But there is something Crake didn't manage to edit out.
That's the really striking insight here. They developed this reverence for the invisible. They're described as conversing with the invisible. It's precisely the kind of abstract thought, maybe spirituality, that Crake tried to eliminate. It suggests some fundamental human or perhaps sentient need reasserted itself despite the genetic engineering. Crake couldn't code out wonder, it seems.
That is fascinating. A ghost in the machine Crake built. So Snowman eventually decides they need to move, leads them out of the dome.
Yes, towards the seashore. He calls it home. The sources detail his planning. He even prepares a sort of sermon, though he knows they don't need moral rules like thou shalt nots. Crake supposedly built in their morality.
So what's the real weight he's carrying on this journey?
It's immense. He's constantly making up truths for them, guiding them based on his flawed memories and inventions. He carries the burden of all history, all knowledge, such as it is. And internally, the document shows he's a wreck. Constant internal chatter, guilt, despair, these hallucinations like Alex the parrot.
Does he think about ending it?
He considers suicide, yeah, but dismisses it, calls it a gesture that lacked elegance because there's no audience left. He clings to having this job to do, protect the Crakers. And those final encounters mentioned with other survivors, equally battered, making him realize he's just another hairy, naked maniac. It leaves him in this state of profound uncertainty. Survival, but to what end?
So, stepping back from this deep dive, we've really been pulled into a world where human ambition, particularly scientific ambition, just ran wild, leading to incredible creations, yes, but also total destruction.
Absolutely. We saw how desires like immortality, convenience, control, they're pushed to these terrifying logical extremes, and it didn't just change the planet, it fundamentally altered what it meant to be human.
And Jimmy's transformation into Snowman really lays bare that fragility, doesn't it? Memory, knowledge, the burden of being the last storyteller, even if the stories are partly lies told for survival.
It does. And as we leave this really unsettling, meticulously documented reality behind, maybe here's something to chew on. Crake believed, according to these files, that Homo sapiens wasn't built to recognize more than about 200 individuals the primal tribe size. And he believed the brain could be edited to remove things like racism, hierarchy. If that's conceivable, what actually defines human meaning? Is it just these fragile stories and structures we build in our minds?
And the final thought. How much of our own world right now, with our own rapid changes and deep divisions, might be heading down a similar path, just waiting for its own chroniclers, its own Snowman?